Hey, it's Coach Taylor from SmarterTeamTraining.com. I've said several times on this radio show that you need to reach out to people within the field, around the field. I mean, you just need to be willing to learn more about what people have going on in their lives, professionally and personally, in my opinion. I had an opportunity to reach out to a master strength conditioning coach, Donnie Maib, at the University of Texas a while ago, and for whatever reason, it just worked out that he wasn't able to do it. There's some things going on there on his end, and the cool part was he went out of his way to find a way to get on the show, and the cool part beyond that even was he sent me an email to follow up, and I thought that spoke very highly of the man as a person. To be honest and clear with everybody on the show, we've never talked with one another other than right before this show. We've gone back and forth a couple times on email. I'm going to challenge you, if you're listening to the show, just to reach out to people in the field and ask what has worked for them and what do they know now that they wish they knew then. And you'll be surprised at the amount of people that are willing to get on the phone with you and just generally talk shop and hopefully help you have less speed bumps or less stumbling blocks, or give you an opportunity to chase success a little bit, through vicariously living through what they've learned. And so, Donnie, man, it's really an honor and a privilege to obviously have you on the show here, my man. I'm looking forward to an incredible conversation. To be honest with everybody, we started the show here a little bit, and then the recording dropped on my end, and it was a stumble on my side of things. So, again, Donnie's just showing his professionalism as far as everything he's got going on his end. He's willing to start over from the beginning, to be very fair with everybody. And, Donnie, man, I'm very impressed with your professionalism, and I'm looking forward to a great conversation, big dog.
Oh, Coach Taylor, I appreciate it, man. I'm really looking forward to doing this. I'm glad we finally could get it to work on both ends, and hopefully we'll get some good stuff out of the conversation. I know we will. I appreciate it.
Coach, man, before we get started, I know we can do Google search anything. I know Texas does a great job on their website, putting your bio and then your background. And if anybody wants to read the description here or visit the website, they can learn a ton about you. But I want to know something that they can't write about, man. I want to know about the passionate person you are. I mean, there's tons of sacrifices that strength and conditioning coaches at the Division I level, or at any level for that matter, go through to get to the top of the game, man. And I want to know a little bit about where your passion came from and really what stoked your fire to just stay in the field this long, man.
Would love to share that. Growing up in Tennessee my whole life, I grew up there in a little town called Gallatin, Tennessee, and got involved in football at a very young age in middle school, 7th, 8th grade, and had a real bad injury, broke my leg, and wanted to quit that 8th grade year. My dad forced me to play one more year. And his big thing was, if you fell off the horse, you're going to get back on. You can quit after your 9th grade year. So I went through my 9th grade year and ended up starting towards the end. But at first it wasn't good because I was so scared of getting hurt. Ended up starting, and my dad told me, he said, look, you can quit now. But because I enjoyed it so much, I said, no, I want to go ahead and try to play high school. So I got to high school and started playing, and realized quick I was very undersized for the guys at high school. But what I did find out was I would get to school early in the mornings, and I could go work out with weights in the mornings before school started. So I did that for about a year and a half. It got a lot bigger and stronger, and it allowed me to start on special teams and ended up starting my junior and senior year. So the weight room was a big part of me performing better, even as a young high school student athlete. And I really didn't know what I was doing. I did a lot of what I saw in Muscle Fitness and stuff like that. But I ended up getting good enough to where I got a full scholarship to play football at the University of Georgia, which is even greater when you get to college and you're, at the time, 235, 242 pounds, and all you're going against is 280 to 300-plus pound linemen at the time. This is back in the late 80s, early 90s. I started lifting again and trying different methodologies and principles and stuff like that to help me get an edge on my performance. Ended up starting at D-line there for 3 years, had a very serious injury and blew my ACL going into my senior year, and had the fun question of what will I do for a living now that obviously I'm not going to have a pro career at all. What am I going to do to make money to feed my family? And it kept coming back to the very thing I was the most passionate about, was working out, being in shape, and getting stronger and quicker in the weight room. And so I decided to get into coaching and chose the weight room aspect of it versus being on the field, and that's how I got my start. And I got my first internship January 1994 at the University of Colorado with E.J. Kreis, and that's how I got my start and why I was so passionate.
I don't know anything about martial arts, and I'm going to tell you that right from the beginning of this next question. It's a little segue. But doing my homework on you, I found out that you have a martial arts background. And my main question here is, how has martial arts impacted your program, maybe the mindset that you hopefully established in your athletes? How does it affect or impacted in the implementation of your program? And really, how has it added value to what you got going on?
Martial arts for years was definitely something I got into at the University of Colorado. And working with football, I've worked with football players for 17 years in this field. And if you work with football players, you know it's a violent, physical game. And you've got to be able to use your hands, whether it's a receiver, whether it's a tight end, defensive end, offensive lineman, defensive back, whatever position, you've got to be quick and physical and athletic with your hands. And the funny thing about athletes, especially football players, they think because they can hit and it's a physical football game that they're really good with their hands. When you get to working with them, they find out really quick they're not very good with their hands. There's a couple exceptions, but for the most part, they can't use their hands very good. And martial arts is great to develop the mentality of your athletes, whether it's football or another sport or athlete you'd like to work on, because it teaches you how to fight. It teaches you how to flip that switch internally when you step on that court, when you step on that field, because that's the mindset and the heart of a warrior is that they, at any moment, they've got to be able to flip that switch on the inside to compete and win the battle for the day. Secondly, martial arts is about teaching an athlete how to control their bodies. It's not about how strong and powerful you are, but can you efficiently and effectively use the power and strength you have and leverage your opponent against you. And so that's what martial arts does. It teaches you how to actually not punch hard, but how to relax and move efficiently, which is huge for any sport.
Leading up to this interview, I reached out on social media and just posted a couple things, and I wanted to find out what people wanted us to talk about, to be very, very honest with you and fair leading up to this show. And one question people had was they wanted to know about the common mistakes, and I kind of want to put my own little twist on that. I want to talk about things that makes people successful and things that you see that are making people identify themselves as being positively different and making a positive impact on a team. And what is one big successful trait that you've seen with your athletes when they're preparing to go from that high school to the college level or even from the college to the pro? I mean, what's one big attribute that they have that just separates the good from the great?
Well, I think, being in college, one of the big evaluation characteristics you look for in any athlete, no matter if it's football, basketball, baseball, volleyball, soccer, is what is it in them internally that's driving them? In other words, do you want to be good or do you want to be great? And the ones that really want to go on and play at the next level beyond college, they have a big internal drive and ambition to do the little things, to eat right, to get their body in shape, to train, to work on their weaknesses, to develop their strengths to a greater level of skill. What I have found is if they lack that ambition and that passion to be great, it's like pulling teeth. Everything they do, it's more of an obligation versus something that's a privilege for them to do day in and day out. But you really want to look for it, like, what do you want to do? What do you want to do beyond this position you have now? Do you still want to get your degree and move on, or do you actually want to get to that next level? And, man, if they got that one element, the rest of it becomes a lot easier for us.
When I think of Texas, and I don't care if it's the football program, the baseball program, soccer, I don't care what it is, I'm thinking speed. And I don't know if it's that the color orange you guys are rocking down there or what you got going on, but I'm thinking speed. And to be honest with you, I want to talk to you a little about how you separate conditioning sessions from speed development training. I get a chance now to go all over the place and watch people, take people through, athletes or clients or whatever you want to call them through workouts. And a lot of times you see speed sessions really being confused with what, in my opinion, is almost like a metabolic or a conditioning session. I mean, how do you separate those two different aspects of athletic development or athletic performance in your program?
Well, I think it's simple. I think if you look at somebody's program for the week and you look at how they've got their program laid out, And I like to make things simple, but don't take a conditioning session and turn it into a speed session or a strength session. And don't take a speed or a strength session and try to turn it into a conditioning session. And I think that's a simple mistake we can make because sometimes we try to accomplish too much. The key to that, the question you're asking is, make your emphasis for that day the emphasis, and don't go outside that. Sometimes we try to do too much in one session when you really don't need to do that much. So as you lay out your week, or you lay out your cycles for the next 2 to 3 weeks, the next several months, each day should have some sort of an emphasis of what you're trying to accomplish. I like to say right above that day, like, what is your objective today? If you do a bunch of different things on that same day, you're really not going to develop any qualities. It's going to be like kind of like doing circuits. You're going to be in good shape fitness-wise, but you really didn't develop or enhance any qualities in their body, physically speaking. So I would designate which days a week you want to do your linear speed. Maybe it's one day a week. Maybe it's twice. What days of the week do you want to work on your lateral? What days of the week do you want to actually work on their conditioning, getting their fitness level up? And I think those are the key elements of any program. There's not a right necessarily or wrong way to do it, but knowing, and there's a distinguishable difference when I look at your program of what days are linear speed, what days are lateral speed, and so forth.
For the athletes or the coaches that work or play in an environment where they have to jump, and that doesn't mean that may mean the combine where they're being evaluated in the vertical or volleyball or basketball, that type of thing. I mean, what advice would you have for, and let's just use the high school player so we step you out of your environment a little bit. I mean, what advice would you have for a high school player looking to go to the next level and that individual who wants to increase their vertical? I mean, are there some things that they should be doing to really enhance their opportunity to grab a little more air?
You know, if you want somebody who can jump higher, you definitely want to you want to develop a foundation of strength, just a base level of strength. And again, if I could be talking to coaches today, I met with some coaches not long ago, and they're working with some really young kids, and they've never lifted weights. Well, if you've never had a weight program, I would not recommend that you go out and just start your own weight program. Maybe you just start with body weighted exercises. I mean, I always like to say the best coaches don't have to have this huge weight room with platforms and all these weights, but just getting good at moving efficiently. You know, if you look at their leg strength, how strong are they? Can a young kid even do just a body weighted squat efficiently with the good mechanics and good squat patterns without any bad technique? If they can't even squat with their body weight, why would I want to load them with a dumbbell, a barbell, or anything like that? So I would look at just starting with their body weight first. Then when I would go to maybe using a lighter, maybe a wooden dowel rod. Then I would go to using maybe kettlebells or dumbbells, something that's a little bit heavier where I can really develop those quality patterns. And then I would progress from there. But I would definitely, just like a baby, I wouldn't take them from crawling to sprinting. I would take them to crawling, to barely standing, to walking, and then to running. But I would definitely watch my how I advanced them through those phases.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you've had an opportunity to work with some throwing type sports, whether it's baseball, volleyball, that aspect where that hand has to go above the shoulder height just to perform a skill and throw an object or a baseball, whatever it may be, hit, tennis, that type of scenario. I mean, what can be done to protect or prepare the shoulder girdle for the rigors of a long season? Is there anything that you're doing in particular that you think has really helped your athletes become a little more bulletproof when it comes to the weak links of the body?
Yeah, I would say this, Coach Taylor, that your shoulders and hips are connected. So look at, because what happened is, if somebody's locked up in their hips, they're really tight, they're immobile, they don't have that range, they're going to compensate for it by using their shoulder, opening up that shoulder girdle further than it should. The lower back's going to take a pounding from it. So your body's going to find some way to compensate for that lack of mobility in the hip or the shoulder or vice versa. So look at the hips first. Are the hips mobile? Are they flexible? Are they hypermobile? I mean, you want to look at both. You want to create stability in there if they're hypermobile because they could be unstable. So I would look at the hips. Secondly, for the shoulder, any throwing motion, You always want to, whether it's throwing or hitting or a single arm rotation, whatever it may be, you want to look at risk versus reward on anything you do with that shoulder. So I don't want to do, if I'm in season, I don't want to do a high risk exercise or program with very low return. So you want to be careful in season, but off season I can maybe do a little bit more riskier exercises, whether that be a single arm dumbbell snatch or overhead snatch or something like that, or split jerk out of the rack. If I'm out of season, then the risk isn't there with the shoulder. I can develop that technique and strength. So you want to look at the risk versus reward. I think the other thing, and I got this from Coach Dan Paff years ago, was if you're throwing or hitting, that is a specific skill for that athlete. You have got to find different ways to develop overhead strength. That may be at first just holding a weight overhead while you're doing step-ups. That may be throwing med balls overhead. It may be, maybe you look at that athlete and they got really bad posture. You don't need to throw anything right now at first if they got bad posture. You need to work on postural correction, work on posterior shoulder strength. That's the traps, the rhomboids, the posterior deltoid in relation to the front, the anterior of it. And so those are the things you want to look at is posture, overhead strength, and hip mobility. Those kind of three things, kind of evaluating those three things to develop that strength and keep that shoulder healthy over the season. Not just doing a bunch of exercises, but trying to find out what's actually causing problems there, what's causing tendonitis or whatever the pain you may be feeling in there in the shoulder.
When you're training different levels, or whether that's chronological age or training age, depending on how you're looking at that, I mean, how do you progress or regress, for that matter, your program? Are there any special considerations that you make for freshmen versus a fifth-year senior or someone that's coming back from the pros, or maybe even a high school athlete that didn't have a big background in strength training and they're taking their first steps into your program? I mean, how do you walk people through that training age or that chronological age difference as it relates to how you program?
Well, I think immediately you've got to ask, like, the athlete in front of you, what's their training age? How many years have they been training? If they answer not long, then you can start them really slow and teach them correctly. You'll spend a lot more time teaching them. If they've been training for a long time, and then you got to say, well, what level of fitness do you have right now? Well, if they've been off and they're really in bad shape, it'd be very foolish to start them with something that they were used to doing maybe when you worked with them. Maybe you got to get them to a baseline of fitness and do some just general physical preparation first for a season before you actually start adding some more aggressive, dynamic, explosive movements to increase their athleticism. I think thirdly, you got to ask after that is, what are the pathologies in the body? Where have they had injuries? Where have they had surgeries? Maybe you see that their lumbar, their lower back, they've had issues in the past with their lower back. Well, I'm not going to do exercises. Maybe they can't even do platform work, so I'll stay completely away from that, and we'll find another way to train them and through their hip extension and get them explosive. Maybe they need more core work. Maybe they need to get some chiropractic or some soft tissue on their own, and then come in and we'll kind of address different areas. So looking at the pathologies of where there could be injuries and whatnot. And then I think on top of that, you could mix this in there anywhere. What are the needs they have for that sport right now? And try to design a program around to meet that needs analysis, whether it's first step quickness. Maybe it's they're in the third or fourth quarter, they're just really running out of gas. They don't have speed endurance. Maybe you need to work on that a little bit. So what are the needs of that athlete for that given time frame and season they're in currently? That helps.
I'd like to talk a little about an injury prevention, and I really don't like that term, but potentially injury reduction or body awareness, movement awareness, that kind of concept, and more specifically talking about jumping and landing, the deceleration mechanics of the body. I mean, how important are landing and deceleration mechanics in your program in general? Not necessarily just to prevent injuries or to educate the athlete, but I mean, a lot of people are just teaching the whole, jump higher, lift it, further, or to jump, you get the point there. I mean, are you teaching deceleration mechanics, and how important are they in just the overall health of joints and the individuals you get a chance to work with?
Yeah, you hit it. That's a great point and topic. I work with the volleyball team here at Texas, and every off season, these are athletes that they jump for a living. So every 2 to 3 weeks, once we start back in January training, I know they know how to jump. I'm aware of that, but I want to see where the faulty patterns are. And we'll start off with about a 6 to 8 inch hurdle, and we'll do a series of 8 to 10 hurdles, and I'll have them go through and take off and land and take off and land. And it's amazing to me how every year these are girls that jump for a living, and you've got older girls in there and younger ones, how every time we go through that they've got to be brought back and retaught. You've got to retrain that fire mechanism. You've got to retrain how to land properly, how to keep their knees out, and see where the weaknesses are. And I really don't think that as a performance coach or a strength and conditioning coach, you can ever get away from teaching them fundamentals of how to do the little things right. Because if they can do the little things correct, they'll be able to do the bigger things correct when you ask them to do it and you advance them properly. And so I think that taking off and landing, especially with jumping, are so important. Deceleration is great too, but I think what I've learned with athletes over the years is sometimes athletes can't decelerate because their hips are so stiff. They're not mobile and flexible and can't get down low enough to get down to decelerate properly. So it takes off their time, and that's what causes a lot of the ankle injuries and back injuries. When they go to change direction, they can't get down, so they roll their ankle or they have to reach down and bend their back versus dropping their hips. So sometimes it's little things like that you need to work on versus the deceleration to correct it.
I want to talk about strength and conditioning from the strength, the purely weight room aspect of what you do. You're making your money as a strength coach. Are there exercises that you avoid or even encourage in your program? Again, going back to the beginning of this show, man, I don't know anything about you. I don't know if you're an Olympic-only guy or a strongman guy, if you use high-intensity training, one step to failure type protocols at different times of the year. And so I just want to generally just ask, are there exercises or even protocols that you avoid or encourage in your program?
Depending on the season of the year, what time of season we're in, like I just said, if I've got a volleyball team and my outside hitters are taking, 70 to 80 swings a night, I'm staying away from overhead stuff during that season. I'm going to find a different way to work their posterior shoulder, but I'm not going to be doing a lot of throws or anything overhead during that time. Now, I tried that early on when I was a younger coach and made the mistake of trying to do some of that stuff, but man, it beat their shoulders up. And I've just learned over time that there are certain times of the year that I can do certain exercises, like with an outside hitter, and there are certain times of year you can or cannot do it. So you just got to be careful. Now, I like the Olympic lifts. I'm primarily a ground-based training system. That's what I learned in college at the end of my career. That's what I learned at Colorado. But I've also learned, Coach Taylor, as I've gotten older, that there are going to be certain athletes that you just don't even need to do Olympic lifts with them. They don't need it. They're already a great athlete. They're quick, they're fast, they're explosive. They've got some genetic things going on in their body that, you know what, they're going to be better off doing med ball throws or box jumps to increase that explosiveness. So, again, it comes down to a per individual basis when you're evaluating them of what's going to help them be the best athlete they can be in their given sport. Because really that's when you boil it down, at the end of the day, it's have you increase their athleticism, not whether they're a better Olympic lifter or power lifter or squat or bench, but has their athleticism increased, and are their head coaches pleased with the product you put on that court. That's what it comes down to.
I want to change the role reversal there. I want to pull you completely out of the weight room for a second, if you wouldn't mind. I want to talk about nothing that's strength and conditioning related as far as what we're generally taught in a book or even in most internships and mentorship programs and that type of thing. I want to talk about the relationships that are built around or necessary to be built around a successful program. I mean, what is the number one determining factor in your mind of a successful athletic development program, and how important are relationships in that process?
I really feel like the number one thing if you want to get in this field and you want to be successful, you have got to have great people skills. And by that I mean you've got to be able to read people. You have got, Coach Taylor, you've done this a long time. There are some crazy personalities in this field. And you may work in one weight room in Texas and go all the way to the East Coast, work in one, West Coast, and every weight room and the culture in that weight room and the staff and the people you work with those facilities are all different. They have different backgrounds. Their career path to get to that position is different, and they're under different stresses by the administration and the sport coaches. So you have got to have tremendous people skills. You've got to be able to know if somebody's having a bad day. You've got to know how to communicate clearly and properly with different people. You've got to know what your boundaries are when you come in, have great house etiquette when you come in. You've also got to be able to work with different athletes from different backgrounds. I mean, you walk into a weight room today, in Texas, man, you've got athletes from all over the world. They're not just from the state of Texas. So you've got to be able to work with different cultures and ethnicities and upbringings of different families. So that takes really good people skills and to be able to relate, and especially if you're having a bad day yourself and somebody gets on you about something, you can't take it personal. You got to continue to do your job and be professional. So that's what I would say the number one thing is.
I know you've had an opportunity to work with a ton of different athletes, as we've already alluded to. I mean, you've been doing this for quite some time, man, and I applaud the passion that you still have for it. My one big question that I always like asking people, if someone was in the huddle with you or they were sitting there as a staff member of yours or even an intern or just someone maybe that you get a chance to meet at a clinic, I mean, is there one big motivational message that you hope that someone takes from you as far as your experiences that you wouldn't mind sharing here?
I would just ask them, what are you doing to get better today? If you really want to be in this field and you love it, at the end of the day, you got to show me, what are you doing what are you reading? Who are you learning from? What are you doing to push yourself to be better? Because, I think a lot of times coaches will sit back and kind of wait for that golden opportunity, whereas there's a book called The 360-Degree Leader by John C. Maxwell. And in that book, he talks about these different myths in being promoted in your career field. And one of them is called the position myth. And the position myth is simple. It says, I will be a leader for that position when that position shows up one day. That's a myth. You need to have the passion and the drive and ambition and start reaching for that position now, developing yourself for that position now, so that when that opportunity arises, you're ready for it. And if you're not doing that, then you're going to miss it. The window will open and close so fast. And I can't tell you how many times in my own career that I've sat back and waited for somebody to help me to get to that place where really it slowly falls on your shoulders as a coach, as a professional individual. You've got to have a passion and drive to get better and learn every day and see to it that you're growing and stretching yourself, not waiting for somebody to push you forward.
Well, Coach, man, I know you're a very busy guy, and you get tons of things going on there. Again, the people who are listening to this show, we're probably a couple weeks into the fall semester for this guy. I know he's already gone through fall practices, et cetera, and he's starting to get into the grind of the daily, work schedule. And he found a time to just take an hour aside just to talk shop with us on the show. And again, I think that just speaks volumes about as far as you as a professional, Donnie. And again, man, I'm looking forward to just hopefully growing a relationship with the two of us going down the road here, man. I'm just impressed. I took a bunch of notes during this conversation. If anybody has any questions about anything we talked about, and they wanted to reach out to you to find out more information about anything, whether it's working with basketball, baseball players, volleyball players, or even potentially just having you as a mentor and finding out where you're speaking or where you're attending, so you can sit down and just tap into that brain of yours, if you wouldn't mind. I mean, how can they go about reaching out to you and finding out more information about what you have going on?
If they would just drop me an email, that'd be great. My email address is Donnie, DONNIE, .Maib, MAIB, @athletics.utexas.edu.
Well, Coach, man, I know you're a busy guy, like I said before, and again, I applaud your passion. Thank you very much for getting on the show today. Hopefully this is a launching pad for us to do many things down the road here, and I honestly and genuinely look forward to just keeping in touch, my man. Thank you very much for your time today, and I look forward to hearing great things coming down the road from you, not only this semester, but throughout the rest of your career, big dog.
Coach Taylor, it's been an honor and a privilege, and thank you so much for your time as well. I appreciate it.